Welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with National Lead for Strength and Conditioning at the English Cricket Board, Pete Atkinson. This episode of the Pacey Performance Podcast is sponsored by Vald Performance, the team behind the NordBoard hamstring testing system. So the NordBoard is the fastest and easiest, most accurate way to measure hamstring strength in under 90 seconds. So the NordBoard gives you the right information so you can make the right decisions for your players at the right time. So it's already in use by over half the Premier League and dozens of other elite teams around the world. So the NordBoard testing system is on its way to becoming the gold standard for measuring and monitoring hamstring strength. So if you are interested in getting to know anything more about the NordBoard, you can visit Vald Performance, that's VALD performance.com, to find out more. Thanks for tuning in to episode 85 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. So just before we get going, it's probably been quite humbling. Last few days I've been doing a few podcasts to realise that I'm actually at number 85. So just before we go any further, just want to say a massive thank you for everyone's support in getting this going and its kind of continued success. We still keep pulling in some decent guests, so people must kind of value it and guests as well. So thank you very much. So today we've got Pete Atkinson, who is the national lead for S&C at the ECB. So we've had a couple of cricket guys on in the past, obviously Chris Toombs in number 83, and a couple of other guys who've been involved in cricket. But the great thing about Pete is that he's been involved with rugby, Leicester Tigers, with the English Institute of Sport, and now the ECB. So he's got a really wide, varied background of experience and knowledge. So it was great to tap into Pete and get his view on a number of things, including the CPD, which the ECB offer and really proud of. His philosophy over the last 19 or 20 years, he's been involved in industry. Transfer and coordination in cricket specifically, and the importance of what he calls human being skills. So a really interesting chat with Pete. But just before we go any further, I just want to introduce Kevin from Coach Me Plus, who's going to give a part one of a two-part series on questionnaires. So it's a really great, interesting little segment with Kevin, and after it we'll get into the chat with Pete Atkinson.
Well, we're going to talk about wellness questionnaires now and how they can be a very easy tool to basically apply sports science principles to your program, both cost effectively and in a way that makes sense. The one thing that we find with wellness questionnaires is we get a lot of objections as to whether or not they're valid. The research that we point to is McLean, and basically he correlated, his group correlated wellness questionnaires with objective indicators like counter movement jumps, and whether or not the actual fatigue values that they were getting back in the wellness questionnaires fit with the objective measures of the counter movement jump. There are a lot of other ways of capturing questionnaire information. You see Brunel, POMS, BRUMS, TQR, RESCUE, DALDA. A lot of these are a lot more robust and large, and I think might be good in a quarterly or a larger setting. But when you're trying to get into a daily routine and actually look for changes in an ongoing basis, you want to have something that's small, light, and can actually be answered with a few questions. So again, we point back to the McLean, which is based on the foundational research from Hooper and McKinnon. And basically you end up with 5 questions. And these 5 questions have a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest, 5 being the best. Fatigue, for instance, 1 is low, 5 is not fatigued at all. And the questions that we ask include fatigue levels, sleep quality, general muscle soreness, stress, and mood level. And in best practice, in theory, it looks good, but in actual practice, this works well. Teams that actually do this and pull this off are getting really good value out of it. So how do we do this? Well, we can do it with paper. We can do it with Google. You can do it in Excel. There are a handful of small app companies that have them. Some of the larger athlete management platforms have them as well. But really the key that you want to do is you want to get the athlete understanding why we're answering these questions and provide the immediate intervention if something's going wrong. So you take those scores as they're being answered and actually act on them. So if an athlete's fatigued, if an athlete has muscle soreness or whatever that might be, you immediately provide an intervention for them so that they understand that if they're giving you information and they're trusting you with that information, that you're doing something in return for them. We're going to do a part 2 on this and actually get into how we can score these values. I think the biggest mistake that we're seeing right now is a lot of organizations take the information and they simply score the raw value 1 through 5 with a max score of 25. So 25 must be best. Well, that's not always the case, and we'll get into that in the next part.
To get your weekly dose of applied sports science updates, go to CoachMePlus.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. That's CoachMePlus.com.
So today, really pleased to get Pete Atkinson on the phone, who is the National Lead for Strength and Conditioning at the ECB. So welcome to the podcast, Pete.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So do you want to just give us a little bit of information on your background in case anyone's not aware of you, and just maybe a little bit about what you've done and what you're currently doing?
Okay, yeah, no worries. Well, I'm in and around about the 20th year of being in this game. So I think, as a couple of other people have sort of mentioned, I was listening to Stuart's podcast the other day, got into it when it didn't really exist. Around that time, sort of 95, 96, probably spent 2 or 3 years just being a bit of an S&C badger and just taking any opportunity that came my way. I was also playing some fairly mediocre semi-pro rugby at the time. And then in 98, I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time and be offered a job at Leicester Tigers. Back then, they had quite a handy team, so I managed to find myself in a situation where I was working with a team who won 4 consecutive titles and 2 back-to-back European Cups in 2001, 2002. So that was a pretty special period. So the second stage of my career, in professional rugby, which lasted 6 or 7 years. 2005, transitioned out of rugby and got a job at the EIS at Bisham Abbey. I think I was offered the job 2 weeks before London won the games.
Okay.
And I left 2 weeks after the 2012 games there. So a nice little bit of symmetry around that period, and a period of sort of huge growth in that sector. Across all the disciplines, and a lot more funding coming into sports. And then in 2012, landed what is sort of my dream job at the minute, working in cricket. I mean, I'm a Yorkshire lad. I grew up playing rugby and cricket. They're my 2 sort of passions from a sporting perspective, and to be able to sort of lead a program nationally in some of my other sporting love is it helps you jump out of bed with enthusiasm each morning. So I've been with cricket now for about 4 years.
Mm-hmm. So just looking, you mentioned the success at Leicester when you first went in there. Looking back, what was so special about that team at the time?
Yeah, people pay lip service to culture and throw the culture word around quite a lot, but it was a properly unique culture. If there could be degradations of uniqueness, they would be very, very unique. There was I learned a lot there about sport, about brutality, about what it takes to win, about just a mindset. And that Tigers group, looking back there, I mean, there's too many names to reel off, but it was the team that was coached by Dean Richards and captained by Martin Johnson, and a cast of thousands of internationals there. And they were a really special group of lads, and to work alongside them. And I'm actually looking back on things from an S&C perspective. The game's changed so much now. We're so much more sophisticated. At least we think we are. There's so much more understanding of how you can impact on performance than there was then. You probably look back with a degree of embarrassment at some of the things we programmed at the time. But at the time, it was probably a little bit cutting edge.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate the lads there had massive work ethic. The culture drove the culture there in terms of a work ethic, that to be a Leicester player, you gave your heart and soul on a week-by-week basis. I think anecdotally, one of the things that people sort of roll their eyes and think when I tell this story was the reaction if we ever lost a game. So we didn't lose many. And Wednesday morning was always the big defence session. Other teams didn't really do that much body-on-body contact during the week, but Leicester, they'd be smashing each other every Wednesday morning, week in, week out. And you could literally set your watch by the fact that there will be a fight amongst the players on Wednesday morning if we'd lost the previous Saturday.
Yeah.
And it was almost as if it was like let's get things out of our system. There were a few miscreants there who were often the catalyst to it, but it could have been any of them. And then the lads would just dust themselves off, walk off the training pitch. Right, we're all right. And then they generally turn around and beat whoever it was the following Saturday.
Yeah.
There was they were a unique bunch.
So who drove that, Pete? Was that very much player led?
Yeah, I think so.
Obviously the fighting was, but the rest of it.
Yeah, I think that there was a critical mass of very honest, very hardworking lads there who set high standards of each other, and it was obvious when the large group of boys went away to England that there were then other guys who would then step in and do an equally good job. But when the boys came back from England, they'd just pull on their Tiger shirt and they'd play at exactly the same level and with exactly the same intensity that they'd played the week before in an England shirt. There was just no difference to them. Whereas I think at other clubs at the time that some of the players might sort of pick and choose a little bit more. You couldn't get away with that at Tigers, and it was just a special bunch of people and special time. And looking back on that, on the record that they set at that stage, it was pretty impressive.
Just moving into your EAS days, what sports were you involved with, or were you kind of overseeing multiple sports?
I think I probably connected either directly or indirectly with somewhere between 15 and 20 in the time I was there.
Wow.
So Bisham is the home of GB rowing, GB hockey, GB sprint kayak, synchronized swimming when there was a program running. What else? Wheelchair basketball. We had a track and field group of Olympians post Athens that included, sort of Marlon Devonish and others there. And then because of my role when I was leading this southern team, I would get out to Lee Valley, to Milton Keynes, down to Southampton and connect with other sports as well. So that's one of the real beauties of my career, if you like. If you think about it, I've worked in rugby, Olympic sports, cricket, and it's a bit of a dream existence really, because I've got to have had a lot of fun along the way. But to have connected with so many different programs and seeing that the challenges that exist within them, firsthand or indirectly through line managing other practitioners, has been a real eye opener for me.
So how's your philosophy kind of developed across that 19-20 years, and kind of what's been the constants, maybe what's changed over that time across them different institutions and professional sports?
Funny you say that. One of the things I was reflecting on the other day is that almost the more I experience, the less I'm certain of. I think when you come in as a young practitioner, you have some beliefs about which you have a degree of certainty, and I think the more I go along, the more I kind of question things. Philosophically, in terms of asking philosophy, I think Einstein put it quite nicely when he said everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. And I think that the way the capacity of my particular brain works, I have to keep things reasonably simple, or have a simple enough framework, some pillars that I then build things off. I think the first of those is to make sure that you keep performance as a clear focus. So the concept of what it takes to win, actually identify what it is that you're trying to achieve with the athlete or the athlete group that you're working with, and how that's going to impact on performance. Performance is everything. It's not about making you look good as an S&C coach. if the right thing to do for performance is to do nothing, then you should do nothing. So performance is the goal, and so that's the number one. I think following on from that philosophically, then have a plan. If you've identified what it is that's going to help you win and make a difference in performance, then have a plan to get there. I mean, following the plan is slightly different, but at least have a plan. The plan is always going to change. The age-old thing of every plan, becomes relevant with first contact with the enemy and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's important to have one. Philosophically, in terms of another pillar for me, I think I genuinely believe in the uniqueness of each individual person, and I think that's actually quite important when it comes to the decisions you make when around what you prescribe. So, in a nutshell, individualization is very important to me, and so I would be looking at all sorts of different inputs and bits of information about the person, so from the hard factual perspective of what are their testing results, all the way through to what are their preferences and how they like to go about their training and what they believe works. A whole sort of series of different things that you take on board in order to make effective decisions about what kind of prescription to put in place. Couple of other things on sort of my particular philosophy, a couple of areas where you can use a bit of analogy. One would be, and I'm probably looking now in relation more to the development of movement or strong musculoskeletal capabilities than necessarily something like metabolic training. But I think the analogy of the car and the chassis versus the engine. And so what are you trying to do in the balance of your prescription there? Are you trying to build a more powerful engine, or are you trying to make sure that the wheels don't fall off, that the chassis doesn't break? And so that within that you get the right mix and blend of prescription there. Some people need more of one, some people need more of another. And following that up, is another analogy would be about the recipe, the unique recipe for each individual. And, being a northern lad, this isn't going to be some quinoa-based West Hampstead. This is meat and potatoes. So, again, keeping things simple. I like to keep things simple on the basis of, what's the meat on my plate? What, the potatoes, the veg, and the sauce, and what's the blend of those, and what am I going to do that's different for this particular individual? So the meat might be the strength training, the weight room, the development of force and all its related qualities. The potatoes might be, the conditioning, the robustness training that you're going to put in place there and that's my chassis example versus the engine. The veg might be the stiffness qualities, the reactivity, the plyometric capabilities of that athlete, and the source might be the coordination of that athlete and how you develop the transfer qualities, which actually link those basic physical qualities to the performance itself. So I mean, there are a few things that underpin my particular philosophy. I hope that's not too lengthy a ramble.
No, not at all. So you mentioned the transfer there and coordination. Do you just want to kind of tell us a little bit about maybe firstly explain what you mean by them two terms and kind of how you've looked to incorporate them into your program?
Yeah, this I think sort of going back to the notion there in terms of the more experienced, the less uncertain, all of that. I think we've all been in situations where you take either a young athlete or an athlete whose physical quality is not that well developed, and you throw something at them and they get better. I think, and to a certain degree, that we can all do that pretty well. I think where I've found myself scratching my head is the times where you think you're making a difference with an athlete or an athlete group, but you don't really see any change in performance. And and that sort of bothered me. And so you crack on, you do the job to the best of your ability, but you can't quite work out why things aren't really sort of sticking when it comes to performance. Now, I was fortunate in my EIS days to be a recipient of a lot of developmental opportunities, and a couple that came along in around the sort of 2010, 2011 period were some interesting opportunities to look into motor learning skill acquisition. So we had Professor Schollhorn come over from Germany, who's written a lot about differential learning, and we also had Franz Bosch come over a couple of times and talk to us and challenge us around skill acquisition, motor learning, and how our job as S&C coaches is more than just simply getting someone strong. And I think, like a number of people, my first response to hearing what they said was a bit kind of, whoa, what's happened there? And I think it's only when you are exposed to this 2 or 3 times that, well, certainly in my head, that the penny starts to drop a little bit, and you start to see some exciting opportunities. So from the point of view of transfer and coordination, I think it's identifying the movement qualities which actually bridge the gap between the fundamental training that we do and the dynamic, ever-changing setting that is the performance environment. And
so you obviously mentioned coordination there, obviously something that's obviously key in cricket. And do you just want to talk to us maybe a couple of examples in how you incorporate that into your program?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say there is actually, from a coaching perspective, it's really liberating, because when you take on board that, to a certain degree, the amount of learning in a session is probably inversely proportional to the practice result. It's actually quite profound, because it's a game changer there. Because straight away you're not looking for perfect movement all the time. With the lads that I get the chance to do this kind of work with, we talk about a sort of broad sweet spot of between 4 and 8 out of 10 on the challengeometer, where if it's less than 4, it's probably too easy. And if it's getting up to 8 or above, then it's probably too difficult for them to actually problem solve and self-organize a little bit. So, I mean, I'm sure most people out there will have read some of the interesting things that are out there in terms of skill acquisition a little bit, and know that you can vary the constraints of an exercise or a movement based on changing the task, changing the environment, or changing the person. So, changing the task could be anything in terms of what you ask them to do. Changing the person, you could get them to do 20 single leg squats on one leg and fatigue one leg and then ask them to do something. Changing the environment could be changing surfaces or something else there. But there's lots of different ways in which you can manipulate a task. And so it becomes quite fun, because you can just start messing around with stuff. And I think, so to give you an actual practical, tangible example, is, I work, my passion in cricket is working with fast bowlers. And so one particular exercise that we use quite a lot would be a step up. Because I think the fundamental characteristics of the movement, where you need to strike the box from above, and then you need to have the swing leg, the free leg, come up into a nice high position, into a hip lock position. Those are the two sort of constants that you're looking to try and reproduce. But the ways in which you can then challenge that by having lopsided bars, a barbell with things dangling from it, or, all sorts of different things, make it quite fun. And that makes it, a different kind of coaching interaction that you're having with the lads that you're working with.
So when obviously individualization was one of your pillars. How's your ability and kind of resources available? How has them two things changed over the 20 years, and your ability to individualize your training?
Whoa.
Sorry. So we introduced you to technology and things like that.
Don't for one second think that I'm denigrating technology in any way, shape, or form. I'm not, but I don't think that would necessarily be the strongest driver for me. If you come in the gym or wherever I'm working, other than a high-speed camera, I'm not using an awful lot of technologies a lot of the time. I think it's more just being an experiential journey of identifying what has been effective and what's not in terms of program prescription. I've answered your question there, Rob, and may not have done.
No, that's fine. No, absolutely, mate. That's I mean, it's kind of a one that obviously technology comes up quite a bit, and it's just interesting to know how that has kind of impacted people like yourselves, who maybe in the Leicester Tigers days, that it was a lot on the focus on the coaching eye, and then obviously things like, I don't know, velocity-based training and sexy stuff like that.
Yeah.
Kind of get a lot of press. So it's just interesting to see how someone who's been on kind of both sides of that, I don't know, that tipping point of how much that kind of thing influences you. Basically what I'm saying is you're not more likely to get sucked in by this kind of thing. Whereas maybe someone younger may see it as a bit of a sexy add-in. So it's just interesting to see that, maybe that hasn't influenced you as much as maybe some of the younger practitioners.
I think if I'm guilty of falling either side on the balance of that equation, it's probably not doing enough effective use of technology rather than too much.
Yeah.
I've tried them, used them all. Looking back, I've heard other guests of yours on podcasts say the same thing, that you can remember the Tendo back in 1843 and whenever it was.
Yeah.
And there's a time and a place for having some objective data, and so I wouldn't steer away from doing things, but I don't go in the gym and do velocity-based training with a gym aware or whatever. I think I'm more inclined to use my coaching eye and the stronger aspects of whatever personality I've got in order to try and facilitate the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think ultimately the training response and the adaptation you get, one of the key drivers for that will be the intent with which someone trains. Now, if a gym aware or helps to facilitate that, then great, use it. But I'll try and facilitate that outcome myself most of the time. So I'm probably guilty of not using technologies enough, if the truth be told.
Mm-hmm. No, good. So that brings me on quite nicely to something that it comes up a lot, and it's something that it kind of interests me, just because I think I know the value of it, and that's the kind of human being skills, as you put it quite nicely. Do you just want to talk to us a little bit about maybe how that's changed and your appreciation for the human being skills, and how they've developed across your career?
Yeah, it genuinely is important, and I think if I could go back and correct mistakes I'd made in the past, then most of them, the vast majority of them, would be interactions where I've let myself down by not having either the self-awareness or the wisdom or some of those qualities. It's not necessarily programming errors that would look to go back and change. It's interactions with other human beings, and I think it starts with developing your own self-awareness, and that is without sounding trite, that is a journey that you definitely need to go on. You probably never end, but hopefully you do sort of learn along the way. I think you need to know how you impact on other people. I think you need to be able to recognize what happens when you're at your worst, and identify the warning signs there. I think you need to know what your strengths are when you're at your best, and be able to find a way of being at your best as often as possible. Even, for me, just a simple thing is, I know I'm grumpy and useless if I'm tired. It's as simple as that. I'm not at my best if I'm tired. And if I've not had enough sleep, or if I've been overworking. So you've got to be able to mitigate against those things. I think one of the key things which we should all learn at S&C school is how to influence effectively, and how to have different skills that sit in that influencing sphere, and know when to push and when to pull, and when to be assertive, when to be persuasive, when to build trust, or when to just use active listening or reflection or summarize what the other person has said. There's a whole series of different skills that help you have better outcomes with other people if you open yourself up to them and practice them and get better at them and be prepared to use them. And I think you need to know how much of each. You need to know how much push to use and how much pull, and what the downside is of too much push and not enough and too much pull. And it's never ending. You're never going to get it right all the time, but I think you can definitely go on that journey of competence that starts with incompetence, and see how far you can get.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was actually my next point, was where does that journey start? But obviously you've said it with actually going through the incompetence stage and kind of flagging it up in your own mind, I suppose.
Yeah, and again, I think it's easy to slip into jargon, but
yeah.
I think the most important thing is a growth mindset. I think as soon as you accept that you're not perfect and that you can improve, whether it's a technical aspect of your coaching or a non-technical aspect, then that's the first step. And so trying to identify what the gap might be between where you are and where you want to be, and off you go. And the rate of learning is to some degree you're going to be in control of that in terms of how much attention you pay to an area, but other areas of there will be dependent on your environment and the opportunities you get given. So I think it's just important that we really commit to looking to try and have really effective interactions with the people that we work with, the coaches that we work with, the players that we train. And it's not just the days have gone now. We'll long be gone from it being a dictatorial case of, this is my program, you're going to get on with it. It just doesn't work like that anymore.
So has there been any resources that have kind of helped with this journey that you've gone on with regards to your kind of human being skills, or has it been kind of a very, very personal thing?
No, I think I have been helped by organisations in the past. We were really lucky in my AIS days that because I was in doing a lot of line management, we were exposed to a lot of training around, I just think 2009, 10, 11. And there was a number of different courses that went on. There was one particular course that was run by a company called Management Futures, which was actually on coaching in relation to the sort of executive coaching world. And there's a lady called Jenny Rogers there who's written a book on coaching, which is well worth reading. There's so much just life knowledge in there that's well worth a read. And I think the time I spent on that was a 5-day course of 2 different events, a 3-dayer and a 2-dayer. But that was probably the most profound bit of personal development that I've been exposed to, and has really helped sort of shape at least a better understanding for me of my own limitations in this area, and it's kind of sparked a desire to improve and get better. So yeah, I've got a number of different opportunities that come my way, and then I think it's just part and parcel of the mix of different things that you're always looking to try and improve. So if you stumble on something interesting, whether it's on the internet or whatever, then you have a read or read a book on mindfulness or whatever it may be every now and then, and hopefully just keep putting some knowledge in.
Mm. So that brings me a seamless link onto the ECB's CPD. Do you just want to talk to us a little bit about your kind of links with upskilling the county staff and the kind of uniqueness of that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that I feel a fair bit of passion about. If I look back on the comparative environment that I worked in previously in the EIS, when I started there in 2005, there were 3 coaches working at Bisham. By the time I left, I think it was up to about 13 plus interns, and so that just became a hothouse of sharing and development. And we did CPD at the EIS. Don't make no bones about it. But the best CPD that went on there was every lunchtime, the lads just sitting down and just talking. Lads. There was lads and ladies just talking, sharing different things, working with each other in the gym, and it just accelerated their growth massively. And if you look at the group of coaches who were there then, some really, really highly talented people, Alex Wolf, Dave Hamilton, Ben Rosenblatt, Andy Hudson, Katie James, Dan Howells, the list gets Stuart Ewell, the list goes on.
Wow.
It's kind of in some respects, a who's who of that generation of talented S&C coaches who are around at the minute. Now, the first thing that struck me when I started working in cricket was that the vast majority of the county S&C coaches in cricket were a one-man band, and their opportunity to get development and get this sort of development by osmosis, by the development by confirmation, development by looking over the other side of the gym and seeing what somebody else is doing and then asking them about it afterwards is really, really limited. So, I sort of set about to try and give them some outlets to try and move on as practitioners, and B, to try and connect them as a group themselves and to effectively develop a network between them. Now, there's 18 counties. We've got 18 S&C coaches plus some others at some counties. Some have got 2, and they're to a man. They're a cracking bunch of lads, and they're willing to share. They get stuck in at any opportunity. They're open, and there's a lot of really, really talented lads out there working in the county game. But we've managed to put on 2 or 3 events a year plus a conference. Some of the people I've already spoke about. So Wolfie, Ben Rosenblatt, Chris McLeod, Ben Ashcroft, who's at Arsenal, Franz, Stuart Ewell, Duncan French. I've pulled them in to do CPD events. It's virtually all gone down really, really well. So I've tried to sort of tailor each of the events to the sort of special skills of those individuals. At times we've had presentations from the county lads themselves, or I've done presentations, and it's been a nice environment to be part of. With hopefully trying to get those guys to move on, because it helps everybody in the game. If they're doing a better job at their particular county, they're more likely to produce a talented athlete who's hopefully more likely to then go on and represent the country, and that's a win-win for everybody concerned.
Mm-hmm. How much influence do you have as the ECB as what goes on with the S&C coaches in the counties?
You maybe want to flip that question to them at some stage.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously, I know you've had a few of the guys on a little bit, but and there's some sort of directive in as much as there's an annual audit process that is to a certain degree linked to a funding stream, but that's more about just the fundamentals. Are the fundamentals in place of, is there a coach, is there a gym, is there are you following essentially good practice? I actually prefer the way the interaction works here, is that I don't directly line manage any of these lads. They're not accountable to me, and they're not responsible, but I can help to try and support them. So that straight away creates a situation where hopefully I'm not too much of a threat if I descend on their county. It's not like that they've come to be assessed. hopefully the vast majority of them see it as a positive thing, where we just get a chance to chew the fat, I'd work on wherever the problems or constraints are that they're experiencing that particular time, and hopefully bounce some ideas off somebody who might have something useful to talk to them about. I don't within my role, because it's only a part of my role. I don't get a chance to do as much of that as I would like to, but it's one of the enjoyable aspects of being able to try and help the guys develop and move on, and just being a sort of informal mentor.
Mm-hmm. So does that kind of situation with regards, like you say, a mentor, does that situation run down the youth levels as well? They've kind of got, are you the same guy for them, for the coaches of the younger age groups in the counties, or do they have a similar guy to you that they can kind of have, like, be a mentor?
Well, I mean, last year for the first time, we actually put on a CPD event for the assistant S&C coaches at the academies. Now, strategically, things might change in that area, but that was led by Rob Arman, who's our Pathways S&C coach, who's an outstanding coach in his own right, and so that was a step in the right direction to try and help them. But when we actually look at where our impact is going to be most effective, the limiting factor isn't necessarily what the assistant S&C coaches know and don't know. It's more what access are they getting to players, and how does the infrastructure work at their particular county. So it might be more effective actually that interaction for Rob takes place with the county academy directors, actually trying to get sorts of basic regular training in place on a regular basis, rather than necessarily spending our time trying to develop a group of coaches who often turn over quite quickly. But I'm getting into the nuances now and of our particular sport. But I think it was just a feature that we're actually trying to reach out to, not just the sort of head of S&C at each county for the first time last year.
Okay, nice. So I just want to round up there. I don't want to keep you for too long on a Sunday night, but do you want to just let us know are you a guy that's active on social media, just so people can keep up to date with what you've got going on?
I am on social media, but I wouldn't describe myself as an S&C badger on social media. So you've got
there if anyone needs you.
He's Chris Toombs is the Twitter badger.
Yeah.
I follow a number of people that I find interesting, and whenever I've got nothing better to do or whatever, then I'll flick through Twitter and read something from time to time. But I wouldn't. I don't necessarily put a lot of S&C content out there. So your listeners are probably going to be a bit disappointed if they all click follow for me, and then there's not a lot happening on their timeline.
Yeah.
But if they want to, I think it's at Atkinson. I saw Twitter as something that I would just do with my mates when it first came out, rather than necessarily a career thing. And ended up with a silly name.
So, last but not least, you mentioned about the people you follow. Who are your biggest influences in S&C, sports science? Don't have to be anything. Don't have to be even that in business or whoever. Who are your biggest influences at the minute?
At the minute,
apart from Chris Toombs.
Yeah. He wishes. I mean, over the course of my career, a lot of people have influenced me. Going all the way back. Dave Redding and Calvin Morris with the RFU, and John Duggan, who I worked with at Leicester Tigers, through to my current boss, Raf Brandon, who's a very, very clever, intelligent man who's head of science medicine in the ECB. All the guys that I've worked with in between. I don't know. You've done me there, Rob.
That's a good list, mate. That's a good list. Don't worry about that. Don't have to be any more than that. No, that's good, mate. Well, like I say, that was last but not least. So I'll let you go, but thank you very much for giving up 40 minutes on a busy Sunday evening. So Yeah, well,
My
thanks
pleasure,
again.
mate. After you've had 80 odd people on there, I'm not sure if there's anything left to be said, but whether there's a crumb of sense that it's in there, I don't know. I hope there is.
No, absolutely, mate. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking, and let's keep in touch.
Okay.
Thanks
Rob.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to episode 85 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. So just before I let you go, just want to say a massive thanks to Pete for giving up his time on a Sunday evening to speak to me and give a real great insight into the last 19 or 20 years of his professional experience. So thank you very much, Pete, for that. I just want to say also a massive thank you to you, the listeners, for the continued support, and also Coach Me Plus and Vald Performance for sponsoring the episode today. So I'd really encourage you to get over to coachmeplus.com and subscribe to their Applied Sports Science Digest, which comes once a week and provides some great information into your inbox. So thanks again for listening to episode 85, and I will speak to you soon.